Hi, you're watching Floyd Steinberg's YouTube channel. In the early 90s, digital audio workstations weren't around or were still in their infancy, so hobby musicians and bedroom producers were left to the 4-track audio recorders or simple digital devices for recording their music, and making your music sound professional with that equipment was quite hard. So we resorted to some tips we read in magazines and newspapers in order to make your music sound a little bit better. And today I'm going to try some of these tips on modern equipment to see if they still work and if you should do that, or if there are other, more advanced options at your hand today. So here we go. Okay, so the first tip was or is to emphasize your bass drum adding a deep sine wave. The background behind this is that most people in the early 90s used sound canvas clones to create music, or they had cheap sound cards in their PCs. And the bass drums in the general MIDI set often sounded weak, thin, and not very punchy. So adding a deep sine wave was obviously going to make them more impressive. Let's check that. Okay, so this is the EX5 and I've preloaded a sample from an early 90s keyboard, one of Yamaha's Porter Sound series, and the bass drum sounds like this. And this sounds pretty flat, and that's what we had to deal with back in the day. Okay, so now let's follow that advice, edit the sound, go to the oscillator page, and now I'll add a sine wave. So turn this on and choose sound number 286 on the EX5. There we have it, sine wave. And now let's tune this down a bit by an octave, sounds like this. And now let's add another sine wave. And let's tune that one down by 24 semi-tones or 2 octaves. Alright, and now for fun and giggles, let's add an amplitude envelope. Yeah, and there you have it. This totally works. One more thing, you could add some distortion to the sine wave, so let's go to the effect page and let's turn on the effects for the sine waves, and let's choose the distortion here. And now we have this. Yeah, alright, here's a before-after comparison. This is before. And this is after. So yeah, this totally works. Okay, so the next idea is to double track your bass. That means copy your bass track, transpose it an octave up and reduce its volume a bit, and then let it play along the original bass. The idea here is to make your bass more, prominent in the overall mix, so it can be heard even on tiny loudspeakers. Let's try this. Okay, so doubling the bass track, I've created this wonderful pattern here. Listen to this. Alright, and now the instruction says, copy the bass track and transpose it up by some octaves, and that's what we'll do. So I'll press job here, and then go to copy track, and we want to copy the second track to the 6th track, and that's what I'm going to do now. And now also transpose that thing up, and I think 2 octaves will do. So go to the job page once again, transpose, and select the 6th track, and we'll transpose it by 24 semitones up, and here we go. Alright, and now let's listen again. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is to load this WAV file onto a smartphone, and then I'll do a before and after comparison recording the tiny speaker. Here we go. Okay, so the next idea is to create a delay effect by copying your audio track and moving the copies of your track on the timeline and panning them left and right. Let's try this. Okay, so for this I've got a short sequence pre-recorded here on my EX5, and I'm just going to record that onto my Zoom R24. Here we go. Okay, that should be enough. Okay, so we've got a sequence recorded, and now the first thing I want to do is to adjust the tempo to the tempo of the actual track. So go here and then turn this down to 90 beats per minute. All right. Next thing I want to do is to copy the audio file. Okay, so now, let's turn on the track sequencer in the main menu, press this button here. You can see track sequencer is on. Now go back to the track menu, and now let's go to the first track and turn on loop and set pad to 1 shot. Then go to the track sequencer and press record. Place the cursor a little bit more to the right side, so this track begins a little bit later than the first track. Now the next thing we want to do is to pan these tracks, so go to the pan menu and let's go to track 1, and we will pan this to the very left, so use this menu, and track 2 will be on the right. And yeah, now we can record a delay. Okay, and now we can just adjust the volume here. And what we also can do is to add some reverb and chorus to the delayed tracks. And we could also use the equalizer to dampen them down a bit. Yeah, I'd say that totally works. Okay, here's the next idea. Enhance the sound of your snare drum by adding random noise to it. Well, again, the background behind this is, in the early days, people had Sound Blaster cards and Sound Canvas sound modules, and the drum sets on these machines were often lacking. So, in order to create new and interesting sounds, you had to come up with interesting, creative ideas. So let's try that. Okay, so here's a snare drum sound. It's not too bad actually, but it's not great either. So the theory says now add some bunch of white noise to this, and you can improve the sound of the snare drum. So let's do that. I've already prepared that, as you can see here. We've got noise on the second oscillator. Now let's turn that on and listen to this. Okay, once again, without the noise, with noise. Alright, and now we can adjust the decay phase of the noise in order to modify the sound, so let's try that. Yeah, I think it doesn't really improve the overall sound of the snare, but it certainly adds to the texture of the sound and transforms it somewhat. Now once again without noise. Alright. Okay, so what about this one? Make the sound of your pads more interesting, not by playing new notes every time you change the chord, but inserting loudness events on your MIDI track or a MIDI control track. The reasoning behind this is if you use a sound which evolves over time, yeah, it will sound different every time the loudness hits again. Yeah, let's try this. Okay, in order to test this tip, I created two tracks. In the first track, every chord is started with a new note event. And in the second track, every chord is started by changing the loudness to 0 and then to full volume again. Let's listen first to the track with the note events. Okay, and here's the track with the loudness events. Yeah, you can hear, of course, the difference is pretty striking. Because this is an evolving pad and it changes the filter value constantly, so of course this sounds much more interesting. Okay, so what about this one? Split your pad chord track into two tracks, playing two notes on the left side and two notes of a chord on the right side, creating a chorus effect. The background here is that polyphony and multi-timbrality were quite cheap on Sound Canvas and Sound Blaster cards, but effects were not. So yeah, let's try this. Okay, first I'm going to play the chord with the chorus effect on, and this creates a stereo spread, and that's the way you probably do this today. So here it is. Okay, and now I'm going to play two notes on the left channel and two notes of the chord on the right channel, one after the other. Here we go. Okay, and now let's compare that. Okay, and the last tip is somewhat related to the previous one. In arpeggiated sequences, insert random panning effects before each and every note in your MIDI track. So go in there, go to the control track and then insert those panning informations and randomize them so that each note has a new position in the stereo spread. Let's try this. Okay, I'm on the EX5 once again. I'm in pattern mode. I'll edit this pattern, I'll insert a new event, and instead of notes we'll insert a control change event somewhere in the middle of a pattern, and we'll insert a panning event and just select a random value here. So yeah, I'm going through this and then we'll listen to the result later. Okay, so I've entered all the panning information. Let's listen to this. Yeah, this sounds nice, of course it sounds nice. Let's jam along. Yeah, and those were some recording tips from the early 90s on how to improve the sound of your music without having the technology at hand. Did you already know these tips or some of these tips, and do you still use them today? I'd be really interested to know that. Please write it down in the comments below and share your experiences there. And as always, thanks for watching, and if you like this, please leave a like or consider subscribing to my channel, and see you again very soon. Bye bye.